Will James Gunn save the DC universe with his upcoming Superman film? Well, join me as we dive into the world of DC movies and try to figure out exactly how important the new James Gunn Superman is, because should this fail, it might actually be the end. Welcome to Comic Book Nostalgia's take on the upcoming Superman film and exactly how important it is to the future of the DC Universe. As many of you know, this film is set to release on July the 11th, 2025, and it is the absolute critical piece for DC Studios and the future of this brand as a whole. This movie is really important. Now, if you remember correctly, the previous DC Universe, the DCEU, shut down a little over a year ago after Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, despite a few wins, overall, that universe was a financial and critical failure. It lost Warner Brothers tons of money, and by the time the whole thing wound down, there was serious damage done to DC Films' reputation. This was clearly evident in the last few movies that dropped, with big flops from Black Adam to The Flash to Blue Beetle. So, can Superman and this new fresh slate of films revive the brand, while Marvel, despite some missteps, still continues to dominate the industry? Now, in this video, we're just going to talk about the theatrical foundation of the new DCU, which kicks off with Superman. We already got the first chapter in the form of Creature Commandos, and honestly, the response to that was pretty darn good, but Superman will indeed be the first major film. And if this Superman movie fails, it will not only seriously hurt Warner Brothers' Discovery, but jeopardize DC Studios' future as a whole. So we're going to talk a little bit about making this movie, what it cost, what they need to pull out of it, and why success matters well beyond the box office. Now, Superman is James Gunn's very first DC Studios film, and he's not only head of the studio, but he's actually directing this film. Now, what we are hearing is the budget for this film is about $200 million. We did get some recent reports that suggested it was an absolutely astronomical $350 million, but James Gunn has since chimed in and even reached out to the numbers people at Warner Brothers to try to get some clarity. And although this story was based on some budgeting documents that came out of Ohio for shooting the film, well, it was never verified, and Gunn definitely has stated the movie didn't cost as much and he wishes he had that money to spend. Now, there's going to be a lot of money going towards visual effects and set design. We saw a lot of that in those pictures that came out of the production. But you need to keep in mind, one thing this movie has going for it is that the actors are relatively new names. People like David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan are not household names. Well, they're not yet. So this definitely keeps costs low, and they're not shelling out money in the ways their competition, Marvel Studios, sometimes has to keep these very well-established actors returning. Now, in that overall approximate $200 million, marketing is not included, and it's pretty safe to assume that they will probably spend about $100 million on marketing. We have the Puppy Bowl coming up for the Super Bowl next weekend. We're going to see the absolute summer of Superman, which is going to push the film heavily, and this will definitely drive up some of those initial costs. Now, typically, on average, the studio gets about 50% of the box office revenue, and this suggests the film itself needs to do about $550 to $600 million just to break even. At least break even at the box office. For this film to generate about $200 million in profit, it needs to get to about the $800 million mark, which seems definitely doable. James Gunn's last big superhero film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, actually did $845 million at the box office internationally, so Gunn himself definitely has a track record of being able to make these marks. Additionally, that film did about $360 million domestically, which, to be fair, has a higher return on investment for the studio than the standard 50%. Now, will this break the $1 billion mark? Well, it very well might, but we don't want to put the cart before the horse, because the main thing is it needs to be a good movie. A good movie will not only put butts in seats, but it will also build a massive amount of hype for the DCU. And that is ultimately probably more important than just making a hefty profit on this film. If Superman is well received, it definitely boosts the excitement for other projects. We know Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow just kicked off production, as did Lanterns. We're also leading into Peacemaker Season 2, a potential second season of Creature Commandos, and a whole laundry list of other films like The Authority, Swamp Thing, and Brave and the Bold. So a good start means a strong future for the studio. A good project to look to is Iron Man. But to be fair, this was mostly one character. Marvel Studios had grander plans, but they had no idea where they were going at that particular moment. Superman has the luxury of trying to set up the entire universe, and they've added quite a few new characters outside of Superman mythos, including Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and the Guy Gardner version of Green Lantern. Now, many people have expressed concerns that there's just too many characters in this film, but let's be absolutely real. James Gunn is a master at balancing ensemble casts. Throughout the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise and in the Suicide Squad, Gunn proved he can develop multiple characters, make them interesting, all while not overshadowing the lead and primary character or characters. And that's the absolute key with the Superman universe, laying the groundwork for everything that's to come from DC Studios. Now, Superman needs to be a great film, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a billion-dollar hit. We're likely going to start seeing the marketing hit us very hard, probably in the next month or so, being kicked off at the Super Bowl. Now, to be real, DC and DC Studios cannot afford another extended slump if this movie fails. Warner Bros. Discovery is not in the best financial shape, and they have invested a ton of money in this particular film. For me, personally, I think James Gunn was probably the best person for this job. There's not many people in Hollywood who are more suited to rebuild the DC universe, and the structure they laid out for DC Studios, with him and Peter Safran leading the charge, with James Gunn in charge of creatives and Safran watching the numbers, well, this dynamic duo definitely sets them up for success. The first trailer was an absolute hit, garnering tens of millions of views in just a few days. Even recently, short clips and trailers have also garnered massive response from fans. And despite some, underqualified nitpicking, the movie definitely has generated widespread excitement for the upcoming film. James Gunn has a high bar with this project, and he definitely needs to hit a home run. Should Superman fail, the future of DC Studios will be tentative at best. Gunn is also saddled with being head of the studio, meaning the buck stops with him, and reporting directly to David Zaslav. Zaslav is going to want results, and since he is not only the head of the studio, but directing this film, it'll all definitely fall on his shoulders, and although I'm sure Gunn will deliver, that is a lot of pressure on one creative. Now, I want to thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. We're going to try to do more of these sort of comprehensive videos in the future, and I would love to know what topics you would like to cover. Also, make sure you check out our merch down below. We've got some pretty cool t-shirts over at our t-shirt store, as well as links to some great Superman comics, specifically the ones that James Gunn used for inspiration for this project, and all of them come highly recommended. Make sure you dive into All-Star Superman first. It is a classic tale. Now, before you take off though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the real, truthful superhero news, and we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently so you are really, really in the know.